Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of World of Darkness News. Yet another one from the studio, the second one, and this time with a guest. We're going to have Mathas from MathasGames joining us and talking about storytelling, Vampire the Masquerade, and about many other topics. But before we'll get to the interview itself, let's talk about the list of topics we're going to cover in this World of Darkness News episode, from the beginning to the end. We're going to, of course, start with the interview, but right after we have two release dates confirmed for you for the next month, actually, for September. And the very first is Vampire the Masquerade Shadows of New York, the new standalone expansion to Coteries of New York, which is more of a separate story that we're going to cover. And the interactive novel by Kyle Marquis, Vampire the Masquerade Night Road, that I will also give you some details about during this stream. Then we have another dev diary from Heart of the Forest developers, the Little Werewolves, who are sharing the real-life stories that inspired their game. And we also have some more information about the upcoming beats and things happening. We know it's a convention season. There's a lot of video games, things happening around. And we're going to tease you at least some of them. But first of all, I'm going to jump into the interview with Mathas, who is waiting for me on the call. So let me see if he's ready to rock. Hello, Mathas.
Hello, Outstar.
Oh,
How
nice
are
to
you?
see you.
It's good to see you too.
I absolutely love your background. What you have in there?
Thank you. I am a huge just retro PC game collector and just a lot of fond memories for that stuff. But in honor of being on the show, I have two that I picked out that I have to show off because if you have a collection, you take every opportunity to show it off that you can.
Absolutely.
One, of course, is the box copy of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. This one, I actually technically have two copies of this. I only had the CD copy for a while and I couldn't find a box copy, but eventually I was able to hunt one down, complete in box. So it's got everything that would have been in it when it was brand new. And I was super excited about this one.
That's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous, but I think I'm a little more proud of this one because this one took even longer to find. It's completely unopened and it is the copy of Vampire the Masquerade Redemption for PC. It's really, really weird because it opens like a cereal box. You actually have to pull a tab down to rip it open. Yeah, so that's how you know it hasn't been opened at all. It's very weird, but I love it. It's got that gorgeous gatefold opening that shows you all the wonderful insides.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
I know. I'm simply here to make you jealous, basically.
I know. I do not have these, unfortunately. So I'm like forever thinking about getting them myself, but that I don't. And I just look at others and I'm silently jealous. I just want to have reasons to be jealous. You know?
Yeah, that's true. But then if you get them, you can make others jealous. And so that's even more fun.
I know. But first of all, let's start from the beginning for the people in our audience that didn't have a chance to meet you. Could you give us a very short or maybe longer introduction of yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Mike. Online, I'm known as Mathas or MathasGames. I've been doing YouTube content for about 10 years now, so I've been around for a while. But specifically, I'm here because I actually run a couple of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition shows. One by the names of Silence of Shadows and the first season Sounds of Silence. And the second one is a brand new one in podcast form called Stitch of Fate. And I've been running now Vampire live show campaigns for about 3 years, which is kind of crazy. Since I feel like it's just yesterday that I started. And yeah, I've been, like I said, I've been kind of storytelling and doing all this stuff online for a while. And others may know me from Chilluminati Podcast, which is kind of my biggest project, where myself, Jesse Cox, and Alex Faciane sit down and talk about weird stuff online, aliens, ghosts, serial killers, you name it, we talk about it. So there's your quick and dirty in Mathas basic package.
There was nothing dirty about that. It's all it's all very clearly understandable and really awesome. And I actually want to ask you, because we kind of go way back. We did work briefly with each other with influencing and video games back when I was with GOG. And
Yep.
then I stumbled upon you actually doing storytelling for Vampire the Masquerade, which was crazy because I didn't know that other people are into it as well. It's kind of
Yeah, it was
crazy.
the same for me. I was like, people are like this? All right, I'm into it. Let's go.
So I need to ask you, when did your adventure with World of Darkness started, and how did it go? Like, what
Oh
was the
man,
beginning?
my adventure with World of Darkness is actually kind of a weird spotty one because I got into tabletop role playing back when I was like 13, 14 years old. And then a few years later, right around like 18, 19, at late high school, I kind of bumped into Vampire the Masquerade. I had other kind of friends were talking about it, but no one really ended up putting a game together. So I ended up reading a lot. Like I picked up one of the books. I was reading a lot about the lore. I really loved the world, but nobody played with me. So I was
Yeah.
like, all right, that's fine. Fast forward to when Vampire the Requiem ended up coming out, and I jumped on that right away, and I was I was able to kind of get a game together for a few sessions, but that also kind of dissolved, and I was kind of left just reading on the lore of that, and really kind of devouring it. And it wasn't until fifth edition came around that I got my first real chance, maybe surprisingly to some, to run a campaign, and that was Sounds of Silence. And Sounds of Silence is technically my first actual Vampire the Masquerade campaign, and it's my first one ever storytelling one.
Wow. You got
Yeah,
me
that's
shocked in here. I had no idea, and I've
most
been listening to Sons of Silence, and it's like super high quality. How did you do
thank you,
that?
thank you. Yeah, that's like my dirty secret. Is like I really never storytelled. Like I said, I kind of really consumed the lore, and I fell in love with the World of Darkness. I love that dark, modern Gothic fantasy with the horror just overlaid on top of it perfectly. The world, as I'm sure you're aware, that's just the dark reflection of humanity. You can tell so many human stories with these monsters,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what drew me to it. And so kind of jumping in, it almost immediately felt natural to me because I've been
Yeah.
playing for 20 years, but jumping in and storytelling for the first time in a world that's not a fantasy setting and kind of something that I've only really read about, and it clicked so easily. And I have such a fantastic cast that I can thank for that because their chemistry is so incredible right out the gate, that I really, that's kind of that's unfortunately my World of Darkness history is actually rather short up until Sounds of Silence started.
That sounds great, and actually sounds very similar to my personal experience because I've really started like going super deep and like role playing and storytelling with V5. So that was
Yeah.
also something that drove me into this because before I was also the person who read a lot of the
Yeah.
books and just like got all of this lore in my head, but I never had a chance to use it in practice. So,
Yeah.
what made you actually start with V5? What was the little spark?
Well, there's lot of reasons. V5, when I finally got my hands on it and was going through the rules, what I loved about V5 is its well, the rebalancing for right out the gate. I mean, V20 and all the older editions are great, but there's with the longevity and the kind of how old those systems are, everything kind of falls out of whack eventually, and things are kind of unbalanced. V5 brings everything back. And it puts a focus on lower powered kindred, much more young generation. You're not wielding all these insane powers right out the gate. And the hunger system in particular, I love. No longer are you really dealing with like a mana pool, but it's that consistent struggle with
Yeah.
hunger. They just the mechanics of V5 really take the storytelling aspect and the beast aspect of the kindred, and really kind of make it a malleable, more interesting
Yeah.
thing. The hunger aspect, like I said, is kind of my favorite, just because you're always weighing it. You're not worrying about how much blood do I have left and how much can I do this or that. Instead, it's just, okay, well, I have 3 hunger die, and now I know I'm risking potentially murdering this person if I do it, but I'm kind of backed into a corner. I don't really have a lot of options. What do I do here? And it's
Yeah.
those decisions that drive every character from being as close to human as they can, to allowing themselves to slip a little at a time, a little at a time, taking a little bit of a step towards the darkness, because maybe in this moment it's a little easier to do it that way, because in this moment I can just look at this person and tell them to do something. And
Yeah.
it's those slips that tell the riveting stories that we put out online.
And you don't actually like feed anymore to like, as you said, fuel your mana pool, and actually like
Right.
I want to feed so I can basically be powerful and do something awesome. You feed to
Right.
survive. You feed
Yes.
to not actually do something super stupid when you are out in the streets, and you know that there's something ahead of you. You need to act well, and you need to control
Yep.
the beast within you.
Exactly. Like you said, it sounds like such a simple change, right? But in the context of a campaign, it changes all the decision making as to why you're going to do it. It changes the lens at which you look at the mortals in which you're feeding. You don't really look at them as like a mana pool anymore. Like you said, you look at them as you're surviving. You need them to survive. So now, how close do I want to bring myself to the edge? How much do I care? How much don't I care about them? And all these questions kind of get re-brought up to the forefront and are not just mana bags of blood anymore.
Yeah, and going back to the campaign itself, I wanted to ask you about, Silence of Shadows and Sons of Silence, which have been going on for a while, and you had a very wide cast when you were recording it, and a lot of guests and a lot of people appearing. How did you manage that as the storyteller and the writer for the whole chronicle?
Honestly, it was right from the beginning. We knew we were going to have a minimum two guests that were going to play. That would be Maggie and Josh. They ended up playing Camille and Saito. They wonderful, wonderful players and wonderful actors in and of themselves. And since they were going to be side characters, I kind of approached them on the side with a more understanding that they were going to be guest characters. So they kind of had a bit more meta knowledge than the players did. And so allowing them to have meta knowledge allowed me to not have to worry too much about them going completely off the rails, with maybe the exception of Josh's character after a certain point. That allowed it to be more manageable immediately because I'm not concerned about a full character in the regards of like telling a story. It's more that their characters were in service to the other four players' story. They
Yeah.
had their own little personal twists and stuff, but that's kind of how I took care of any of the guest characters. I think we at one point had all six of them on at one point, which was like the largest I'd ever run, and it went really, really well. But I think the real answer is the cast is incredible. Their ability to work with one another, their chemistry, their improv acting skills are so good that a lot of that work that sits on my shoulders immediately falls away because they can shoulder it. If there's ever a moment where there seems to be a slow moment within the game, just general conversation between characters kicks up naturally because when we play, their characters kind of become real and they have a history now, a storied history now. And to have conversations like that is it's something that any ST would dream of because it helps so much to flesh characters out. So I really credit the players to making it that easy for me.
I mean, you're, of course, I think the players have a lot of credit in that, and the cast is really great, but there's a lot of the atmosphere and how well the story is going is, of course, thanks to the storyteller. So big kudos for
Thank
that.
you.
And this actually gives me a very nice passage to the topic of Stitch of Fate and how it started, because Stitch of Fate is right now, I believe, at episode 2.
Yep, episode 2 is out.
Yeah, I'm actually listening to it when I'm walking my dog at night. So the night
That's
walk
awesome.
with my dog is the one that I put the Stitch of Fate on, and I'm
Oh,
caught up.
great.
And it's really atmospheric with the music that you added to it, with the audio effects, and with the wonderful voices of the cast. It's just it's
Yeah.
honey. It's just like
It is. It's so good.
it's great. So how did it start?
It gets even better after by episode 4. Mark's microphone switches to a good one, so he doesn't look. It'll be even better later on. But Stitch of Fate is something we've been working on kind of in the background for about 4 or 5 months. It's been an idea we've been batting around. We knew we wanted to play more vampire, and we just didn't know what format we wanted to do it in. And when we were looking around, Twitch stream was kind of at the top initially, and then kind of went down from there. But I had obviously Chilluminati podcast, and it was I was looking at the podcast sphere a lot more because of it, and I realized that there's such a ripe ground for tabletop RPGs in the podcast format, and a serious one that's like not comedy focused and much more mature themes and stories. And Vampire fits that obviously perfectly, and we've all played and we all loved it. So after we made that decision, we then decided on the length of like an hour. I think is a great bite-sized chunk. We all sit down for a 4-hour session, but we break that all down into the 3 or 4 episodes. And once we figured out who our cast was, and Mark agreed, it was kind of just cake from there. We knew we wanted to do New York. I had played the Coteries of New York a little while ago, so I had at least a nice little base level knowledge as to some of the cast of characters I wanted to use there.
Yeah,
And
I've
then
heard
from
some little drops of names from Coteries
yep,
already.
yep. There's even more coming. Don't worry, it's really fun. But you know, New York is so different from my other game, which is Chicago, in that New York is a bit more of a tense situation between the different factions that are kind of sitting around that city. And with what knowledge one may have from playing Coteries of New York, there's some fun little twists you could play in there. But I wanted to kind of visit a new city, have a new theme, have a new atmosphere, and play with a coterie that, unlike in SOS, isn't brand new. They've
Hmm.
been around for a while. At least most of them have been around for a while, minus one of the characters, which is a Thin Blood. And that was a brand new challenge for me as well, because now I wanted to. The difficulty for that for me as a storyteller was, especially putting on a show like this, was how can I introduce these characters in a way that makes it feel like they've known each other for a while, even though it's episode one, but the
Hmm.
viewers or listeners can get a sense of their personalities right away, so they at least have an understanding as to who's who, and then we can flesh it out later. And then beforehand, maybe a day before, I threw the idea at them as like, why don't we start out in the basement of Vera's club, where Max is, had a little bit of a breach within the rules, and you're dealing with this person. It'll give you an opportunity to kind of you each kind of pitch in how you want to punish him. It'll give you all an idea as to how your character's personalities sit when it comes to these things. And then you might be able to get yourself a nice little minor political benefit out of it as well. And you can see how the coterie deals with that.
Yeah.
And I really loved how it went off. And it went really well. The other thing we really wanted to focus on with it was, since we were going to do podcast format, we wanted to see if we could bring out like an audiobook like nature for it. Something that, if we're going to be podcast, we might as well lean into the benefits of it. And so we brought on an editor who brought
Hmm.
in the music and the sound effects. None of it is scripted, minus the opening that I read in episode one, just the opening kind of theme. Everything is improv and kind of put out there in the moment. And the
Hmm.
editor just kind of makes it happen perfectly. Yeah, none of it's scripted. I don't know if
That's
people
so.
know that.
Oh my god, I was totally thinking it's scripted because it fits so
Not at
perfectly.
all. Zero. The only part that's scripted is the opening monologue that I gave in episode one. Everything else is just improv off the cuff. I have my overarching story that I want to do, but the way I do things as an ST is I want to kind of just present scenarios that the characters can drive.
Yeah.
And as long as they're moving forward towards the main plot, I just want to see how they interact and how they do their thing. And the players are so good. It
Yeah.
sounds scripted, but it's not. It's all improv.
They're very, very good, and I actually do feel chills whenever I hear Duke speaking because he's so scary.
He did some studying before the podcast. He went through about a week of like listening to interviews and watching some documentaries on some true crime people, and just to nail that kind of just dead voice. And it's
Hmm.
just, man, when Bub turns it on, you're just like, oh, it's so eerie. And it's a look at the Ventru clan that we don't get very often, which
Yeah.
I love. We always get the blue blood rulers that want to sit on the throne or kind of business boards, but that creepy, like, dead killer just look you in the eyes and can tell you to do whatever he wants. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and like I also was very surprised to see this particular cooperation in between a Finblood and a Ventru that was, as much as Ventru was approaching it, very openly and almost friendly, the Finblood
Yeah.
was extremely scared of him, just like everyone listening to Stitch of Fate would probably be.
Sean has quickly become a fan favorite, I think, for that podcast. Josh does such a good job at playing a Thin Blood who seems so out of his element and was kind of stuck with these three that have been around for 50 plus years at least. It's so good. And I can't wait, because starting episode 4, we're going to see a little bit more into Sean's life that I think is going to throw the listeners off and maybe creep them out, which I think is going
Ooh.
to be great.
I am very much tempted to hear what's going on next. And speaking of that, I actually saw the really beautiful artworks that were made for Stitch of Fate and the portraits of the characters. And this is interesting because usually when we watch the streaming chronicles and actual plays, we kind of connect the character to the face and we see, Erika Ishin, we think Annabelle, for example. And in this
Yeah.
case, with the podcast format, you have this freedom to create the personas from the get-go by the artist. And
Yes.
the artist did a wonderful job, by the way. But what are the other differences that you as a storyteller and as the author of the project see in between the streams and the actual plays and the podcasts?
Honestly, as you kind of hit on, it allows us to dive into your imagination even just a little bit more than you normally would on a stream. Because, like you said, on a stream, it has its own benefits, obviously, and
Yeah.
there's such a great reason to do stream shows. I do one. I love it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But you, like I said, you want to lean into the strengths of whatever medium you're trying to play into, and podcasting allows you to dive into the listener's mind more than anything else because they're not looking at a screen. They're kind of letting they're either walking a dog or doing some work, and their mind can kind of go.
Yeah.
And looking at a picture of art that, like you said, is so phenomenal. Zara did an incredible job. It's like visual novel quality art. It's great. Now, not only are you kind of being taken away by the sound effects that are happening in the background and the descriptions that I may be giving of the landscape, but you now, when a character speaks, there is immediate representation of the idea that of the character, what it looks like. It's the player's perfect representation of their character, the best they could ever do, and you're not seeing a human representation of that. It's now in your mind as like as any book would be if you were reading, say, Harry Potter or what have you.
Yeah.
And it just allows, I don't know, it's something is there's really nothing more to it than just I can infest your brain a little bit more and I can bring the characters to life just a little bit more.
I need to ask the question in here. Have you actually listened to Walk Among Us audiobooks of Vampire the Masquerade just yet? The newest for V5. Oh my god. I just
Not
like I was so sad once I finished listening to them because
Ooh, I'm excited.
like there were three of them and the very like I feel like all of them are great, but the third one just basically threw me off my shoes and just,
Oh, really?
like, yeah, and it's like I was listening to this voice actress with this like very like female, very mature voice, and she was very low, mature female voice, let's say,
Yep.
that was basically playing a Toreador and a very experienced Toreador. That's like really showed the Toreador obsession in an absolutely wonderful way, and I almost cried when it ended because it was so
man.
good.
Oh, you're getting me excited. I'm excited. I need a new book. Like I've been reading a bunch of stuff for other things. Now I'm ready for something for myself. So I'll dive right into that. I love it. Man.
I became a fan of audiobooks because of that, and that's also why I'm right now just constantly looking for something to listen to, and Stitch of Fate is really filling that gap for me. So
I'm so happy to hear that. You have no idea. Like, and just again, I'm even blown away by the quality of the podcast. So, like, because I listen back a little bit just to, I want to nitpick at myself and see what I can do better. But I even get pulled in and just like, man, this is great. I love it, and it's so fun to do.
So I know that you probably like listen to this question, have this question asked to you many times, but I need to ask it again. What advice would you give to the starting storytellers who are writing their first chronicle and they really want to entertain their players, but maybe also the audience because they're planning to stream or to record it? What would you say to them?
The very first thing I would drop is there is no wrong way to storytell. Do not feel like if you watch, the way I do it or any of the other great DMs out there that DM online, the great thing about us all is we all do it very differently. So don't worry about that. As far as going into writing your first chronicle, my advice is simply make sure your players are having a good time. That's very, very important. But make sure that your story is in service to your players. That's the way I go about things. Of course, you want to have a big bad and crazy twist and you want to blow your players away, but make sure every plot point, every hook is in service to the characters that are playing in your story. You want to see, at least for me, the way I play Vampire is I want to see these characters go through true character arcs, hard decisions that are going to change the way they act from there on out, hard decisions that might even change the way they level their characters than they initially thought, decisions that are going to slowly have them ask the question, is it worth the humanity slip? Because those are the questions that are going to drive the need to play more. Those are the questions that are going to have the players at the end of every session going, I can't wait to come back. It's not about the experience points all told. It's not about the perfect leveling structure. It's about wanting these players to continue to dissect the plot, whether it be the political plot that you have laid at their feet or the personal plot underneath it all. But make sure you're always pushing them to just challenge them in the story. Bring out the worst and best in them.
Watchers, just to give a short version of that, torture your players. That's what Mathas
Torture
said.
your players. I guarantee you is what my players would say as well. I just don't, what happens sometimes.
Sure. Of course, I am very curious to ask you one question. Are there any World of Darkness things that you are looking forward to the most that are coming right now?
All of them, everything. I want more Werewolf news. I'm so excited for Werewolf. I'm so excited to get my hands on all the new games coming out. I'm obviously excited for the new vampire books that are kind of knocking on the door of almost being released. I just want to add them to my collection. Bloodlines 2, I'm obviously clamoring for always. The Wraith news, I'm super excited to see Wraith VR. That's so smart. I'm excited for that. Everything.
Yeah.
Is that an answer? Everything.
This is great because I'm going to talk about most of these things today. So great.
I'm excited to listen to them.
But I really want to ask you right now as like a slow way to unfortunately wrap up. Although I would like to talk to you about Vampire Forever because it's just
I would love to as well, but I understand.
Yeah. How can we find your work and especially Stitch of Fate? Because I think it's like the most the fresh thing that is coming from your workshop and your storytelling workshop, and it's something that I've personally enjoyed super much.
Thank you. You can find me if you just search for Mathas or MathasGames. I'll pop up in some form or another. But you can find the Silence of Shadows or Sounds of Silence campaign at twitch.tv/roll for it every Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. Stitch of Fate should be on every single podcasting app you can think of. Look for it. It should pop up. It's also going to be on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/MathasGames and also on Josh's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Strange Adventures. You just look it up, and if you enjoy it, like just feel free to leave a review. It always helps to boost it out and kind of get it out there. And if you want to hear any of my personal stuff, just listen to Chilluminati podcast. That's where I would direct you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mathas, for joining us. I'm looking forward to the next episodes and to everything you're doing, and I really am looking forward to roleplay with you.
Yes, no spoils. Can't wait.
No spoils. See you later. Bye. So that was Mathas from MathasGames, and it was a really huge pleasure to talk to him and to get a little bit more news about the storytelling campaigns that he is an author of and a storyteller of. And I really, guys, I recommend you Stitch of Fate very much. And he said in the interview that it is one of the stories that is being set in New York, and one of the inspirations for that was Coteries of New York. I've been actually listening to the first 2 episodes and I've heard some of the names drop, so I wonder if the new upcoming game from New York is going to add some more characters to Mathas' story and to Josh's story as well, because Josh is one of the players. And that is Vampire the Masquerade Shadows of New York from Draw Distance. This is the standalone expansion to the Coteries of New York. This is the story that is, of course, playable separately. It's focusing on a different protagonist. This time you are not choosing a clan. You're playing as Yulia, who is the American woman of Polish descent, or she's actually Polish, I believe, and she is of clan La Sombra. And the story is very much concerning around the clan La Sombra, and it's a very untypical placement in the vampire hierarchy and vampire politics in the 5th edition. Back in the days, for those of you who played Vampire the Masquerade for a longer time, you probably know that La Sombra was one of the clans of the Sabbat faction, which is not that much present in the modern knights. What happened with them? You may find out soon, but La Sombra, as of now, has joined Camarilla. They found that this is, as much as it's a very risky move for them, it's a move that they had to pay for with a lot of their reputation, with also the life of a lot of or unlife of some of the La Sombra members. This was the natural way to continue for Clan La Sombra and to find a way, sneak away into the power again, as Clan La Sombra very much likes their power. They're a little bit different than Ventru. I really recommend you guys to check out their description in in a Chicago by Night to get a little bit more explanation of what La Sombra are exactly in the setting. And if you are more into finding out that through the story, Shadows of New York is going to be a very good introduction. Just like Coteries of New York was a very good introduction to Vampire the Masquerade in general, this one is going to introduce you both to Vampire and to Clan La Sombra, while also giving a lot of the nostalgia vibes for people who played Vampire for a while. Some of you may also remember that Coney had a lot of characters which were drawing back to the older books and stories which were taking place in New York. Some of the characters that appeared in Coteries of New York were known to the fanbase of Vampire the Masquerade for a longer time. And this is going to continue in Shadows of New York, as some of the characters will make their reappearance, but there will be new ones as well. The release date is September 10th. It's very soon, and of course you can expect me to play this game, so I will for sure show it to you guys, but I cannot wait for you to play it and let me know what you think about it. I actually have to admit I did play some Shadows of New York already. I think I'm about 2 hours in right now, and I feel like the writing is really up there. It's really awesome, and it starts from a very high standpoint when it comes to the quality of writing. This game also will have multiple endings, so we can expect the story to branch out and give us various possible outcomes, and I'm very curious about these. September 10th, the game from Draw Distance, Vampire the Masquerade Shadows of New York. I am going to very much await playing it with you guys, and I'm going to answer some of the most asked questions about Shadows of New York to give you guys a little bit of better glimpse on it. One of the questions which were popping up a lot is, which platforms will Shadow of New York be available on, and will there be a simultaneous release date? So Shadows of New York is going to be available on PC, Windows, Mac OS and Linux, PS4, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. And also it's going to be available both on Steam and on GOG, so you can get it either on either platform as you prefer. There was a question about the accessibility options as well. This is something that is very important for me, as I don't have a very good eyesight, but I'm very happy to see the font options in Shadows of New York, which enable you to enlarge the font a lot and make it much easier to read through the story. So if you have problems with the small fonts in games, especially on Switch, this is my problem personally, this game is not going to give you any. It's really helpful. And when it comes to, this is something that I was actually reading the info on the game, and I found something pretty interesting. The warning for the mature content that is going to be in this game, and I'm going to list it out for you guys just to make sure that you are going to be ready what's going to be contained in it. And that is offensive language, violence, drug addiction references, alcohol depiction, black humor, blasphemy, characters with extreme opinions, critique of ideology and religion. Just letting you know, Julia, it's a Polish pronunciation, as a main protagonist, she has a very sharp tongue, and I love the way that she's, depending of course on what you will choose as her various options in the way that you can interact with the surroundings. She has a very interesting, very snarky, sarcastic way of approaching to everything around her, and the world is paying her back with that. So there's a lot of the nice bantering and bickering and conversations going on in the game. So far, in the very first 2 hours, I've fell in love with the personality of Yulia, and I really hope that you guys will too. But as for now, let me continue to the next release date that we have for you today. I'm very happy that I have 2 release dates to share on the stream. And that is the release date for the very first Choice of Games Vampire the Masquerade interactive novel. Vampire the Masquerade Night Road is going to release on September 24th, and that is the game written by Kyle Marquise. So Kyle was a guest on one of the episodes of World of Darkness News, and if you actually had watched that, you probably know that he went into very big detail into what the game is going to convey when it comes to the story. He was answering a lot of the questions from the chat. He was very open about how many things he wants to put in the Night Road. And if you want to watch that interview, check it out on YouTube. We've archived it, so just go to our YouTube and search for Night Road, you will find it. And when it comes to the interactive novels, this is a bit of a different genre of a video game than Shadows of New York and Coteries of New York. This is the game that doesn't have any graphics nor audio. It's basically a text game, and because of that, there's a lot more content story-wise and mechanic-wise, because it's just so easy to put a lot of the additional possible choices and content and mechanics in the depths of the text. You may actually try out and play some of the Choice of Games titles for free on either mobile platforms or on PC. They have this big underlying mechanics lying below the text, so it reads like a book, but once you actually start to pick up choices, it starts to branch in a pretty dramatic way. I feel a much more defined and refined way than a lot of the visual novels would, just because the lack of the visuals and the lack of audio allows you to do some pretty crazy things, and it's very easy to develop that in that way. And that's why Night Road has car chases, car modifications, tons of clans, tons of characters which you can meet, and there's a lot of content packed into this title. There will be 3 titles coming from Choice of Games. This is the very first one, and Kyle was talking a lot about it on his social media, and he also reached out to some of the community members through Discord to basically test the game out. And let me tell you that so far, from people who played it, I've seen a lot of the very positive sentiment, and people were recommending it all over. So if you are curious about this game and want to ask people who actually played it already about some details, head out to our Discord. It's discord.gg/World of Darkness. The link works now, so you can check it out and just ask about Night Road. We have a specific room and channel there called Choice of Games, which gives you a lot more information about these games in particular. And Kyle is also a part of our Discord, so you can ask him questions there. When it comes to the story itself about Night Road, this is the story about the vampire courier. So you are it's kind of interesting how in the modern vampire times you cannot really use internet and all of these things that we humans can use easily, because vampires need to hide from the society. They need to hide from Second Inquisition that is developing way more ways to track vampires and vampire activity in the surroundings, especially in the US. So what happens on the American roads, the old school couriers are coming back to deliver the secrets from elder to elder. And whether you're going to be just a courier delivering camarilla opinions from one side of the country to the other depends all on you. Whether you want to actually sell this information to someone else, whether you want to betray the faction that you belong to, or whether you will even survive the road, because there's going to be a lot of dangers waiting on you ahead, or maybe you're going to just to focus on your personal stuff going on. It all depends on you, and I feel it's going to be interesting with the broad choices that Choice of Games is giving us in games like these. You can choose to play as a male, as a female, as a non-binary character. Your sexuality is absolutely up to you. It's basically the imagination plays a lot in there, but there are also choices in that determine who you actually want to play in the game, and I think it's super interesting, and I'm very much awaiting the release on September 24th. We're going to also cover more of this game in the future and talk more about Night Road both here and our Discord, so head on there if you want to hear more about it. But I have a very big need right now to jump into something non-vampire, because again, we were talking about Vampire the Masquerade a lot, but World of Darkness conveys more, and one of that things is of course Werewolf the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest, which is the upcoming, the very first game that's going to be released from Werewolf the Apocalypse universe. And this is actually the story written by a Polish studio, Different Tales. We've been covering a lot of their dev diaries and details about their game in the past. We also have an episode with Piotr as the guest, and he's talking a lot more detail about Heart of the Forest. And the latest dev diary that they've put out is actually super interesting. as it conveys more information about the real-life stories which inspired Heart of the Forest. And I would love to show it to you guys, so let's roll it.
While doing research, we found fascinating stories about the Puszcza, and we incorporated them into the game. In the national park, there are barrows that are thousands of years old. These are tombs of cultures that are long gone, of people that we don't know much about. This creates an ambiguous situation. People used to live in this primeval forest 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, but then something happened, war or migration, and now trees grow on their graves. There's also the beautiful story of wolf pups, found or taken by people and then returned to the scientists working in the Białowieża forest. One of these wolves lived there for many years, becoming the poster boy for wolves in the Puszcza. The forest is home to some of the last wild wolf packs in Poland. There are wolves, the remaining European bison. It's an ecosystem that existed long before humans showed up. There are also places that we could consider ridiculous. There's a place of power, a circle of magical stones where dowsers used to meet in the 1990s to study the radiesthetic energies, claiming there are magical powers at work. We can laugh at it in our real world, but in the world of darkness, it has a different meaning. We've taken real legends, places, and stories and translated them to the world of Werewolf, and you can find them in our game.
I don't know about you guys, but I really want to visit Białowieża again. I've been there before, but I really want to go there after playing this game because I want to see all the places that the game mentions, and I want to actually imagine that maybe there is something about this story that is true. Maybe there are werewolves hiding in the Puszcza. It's actually really interesting because this place is something that Polish people know in general. This is a very popular place here touristically, and we learn about it in schools because of the herds of the European bison, żubr, who is one of our symbols, you know, the symbols for Poland. And some of you may probably know it from a particular alcoholic beverage from Poland, which is has a symbol of this particular animal. And we know about it, but it's we never really dwell deeper into the legends, the folklore of the region. And it's interesting how I discover more about, you know, my personal country and the places that I've been to before because of World of Darkness. So thank you so much, developers from Different Tales, for bringing this all up to my attention, because it really broadened my knowledge about Białowieża. And I am very much looking forward to this game as well. And about the new upcoming beats for Heart of the Forest, I cannot tell you much just yet, but I would urge you to follow Different Tales because new things are coming on very soon. And also I love the social media for both Different Tales, Swan Song, Earthblood, and Draw Distance with Shadows of New York and Coteries of New York, because all of these devs cooperate together and put out a lot of the amazing additional information and folklore and little stories about vampires and werewolves. So reading that is one of my favorite pastimes, and I recommend you guys to follow them not only for the updates but also for these. And this leads me very nicely to the next topic, which is the cooperation of our developers that is going on. Some secret shenanigans going on in the studio. I am not really sure what they are plotting in there, but the people on the screen that you can see right now, we have on the very left side, this is Piotr from Heart of the Forest. He's a marketing person for Werewolf the Apocalypse game. Then in the center, sitting down in there, is a person from Draw Distance. assistants, so people that develop Coteries of New York and Shadows of New York. The rightmost side is another writer for from different tales for Heart of the Forest, and on the screen up in there you have the representative of Fast Travel Games, developers of Wraith, the Oblivion. So they met together to do something, and what it's going to be is up to your guess. But there was some little reveals on their social media where they were asking questions to the community, and they were gathering the questions from people asking on Twitter. And these questions might be answered pretty soon. So I am going just to put it out there. Follow these guys to check out what the hell are they cooking. You know, World of Darkness devs hiding from us somewhere in the studio. But speaking of Wraith the Oblivion, we have a nice little background in there on the Skype chat. There's something very awesome coming today, and unfortunately the stream hour is happening a little bit earlier than this is releasing, so I cannot show you the gameplay trailer for Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife just yet, but it's going to be out today. So if you want to watch it, I am urging you to check it out, because it's going to be on the Wraith Afterlife Twitter and Facebook and their different social media. As I said, this is the convention time, so we have games going on, we have PAX soon, and there's a lot of different occasions in which devs can actually showcase their games, and a lot of our developers are using these occasions to showcase some new stuff. And that new stuff, some of them we cannot release just yet, and we cannot talk about on the show just now, but we are going to have some more reviews for you guys, and for that I recommend you to follow us on the social media and check out what we are cooking and what our partners are cooking, because there's going to be a lot of the new stuff coming in the next upcoming days. But before we'll go to, you know, our nice little farewells and goodbyes, I want to again hype you up for the next upcoming release, and that is on September 10th, Vampire the Masquerade: Shadows of New York. Let's watch the trailer again, shall we? Let's that one character in the ending always gets me. But anyway, I'm going to leave the rest of that for your speculation, not spoiling anything. I did play this game and I love it so far. Cannot wait to play Shadows for you guys, and yeah, let's meet next week again from the studio. Next week we're going to have Wraith, the Oblivion Afterlife developers, joining us to talk more about their game after you'll see the gameplay trailer today. So let's see each other then, and remember, don't get lost in the night. Goodbye!